Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is now, Friday afternoon, 4:16, a bit reminiscent of 2 years ago. The Republican leaders in the House and Senate, have gotten to the point where we've had really great conversations with the governor. We've made real movement on both sides. We have come closer together. We are not all the way to where we want to be with the governor, but we have come to the point where the time clock means that we need to start our conference committees and start moving bills. So this is exactly where we were 2 years ago. We have decided to set joint budget targets that we think represent real compromise with the governor. We have moved our positions pretty significantly. I'm looking to see if you have those in your hands. Do you? Yes, they've been passed out. We think this represents real compromise. We are moving forward with the same strategy that we had 2 years ago, which was trying to put together bills that we think the governor will sign. This does not mean that we are walking away from the table with the governor. We absolutely, in fact, the opposite. We hope to engage with the governor over the course of the next 3 days and get to agreement on all of these bills and get bills to his desk that he can sign so that we can get our work done on time. So the joint targets really represent movement. We think real compromise from both sides. Our tax number is literally exactly the halfway point between the governor's number and our number. And we think that that's a very significant indicator that we're serious about getting bills signed and getting our work done on time. So I'll turn it over to the senator.
Yeah, just a couple other things. We did get agreement on the numbers for ag, and we think that bill is being wrapped up. We do have agreement on the environment number as well, so we hope that one gets wrapped up. And we're close on a number of the bills. There's so many of them that we're close on, but not quite there with the governor. And so that's why we picked the 660 tax relief budget number. If you look at what's in that one, there's going to be Social Security exemption for seniors. There'll be small business tax relief. There'll be ag property tax relief, and so much more. And so that still is a good bill, but it's not where we wanted it to be. But that's the halfway number. So we've come halfway on our part, and we're asking that the governor finish up with us on time. And so we've met quite a few times. We would make progress, and it seemed like we were taking a step back. We tried to adapt to a number of changes in when we wanted to have targets and how we came together. But here we are today. I called Tina Smith because the governor's out at a funeral and just said, want you to know that these are coming, that we're trying to communicate. We want to keep moving. We want your chairs to be involved with us as we move through the process so that we can still finish on time.
So if you guys, as this talks progress, if you guys make changes as you negotiate with the governor, at what point can you still add those changes to the bills, and at what point is this a missile that's just going to keep flying?
I think the reality is we can make changes right up until the bill passes the second chamber before it heads to his desk. And we want to remain flexible. If you notice in our numbers, we've left $86 million in the bottom line. That is very specifically to leave us some flexibility as we work with the governor over the next 2 or 3 days to fill in blanks or use that where it might be necessary to close a gap. So we very much want to stay engaged with the governor right up until the end. But we've reached that point in session, which the exact same thing happened 2 years ago, where the legislature has a job to do, and it takes a few days to get the bills, conference committees closed up, and the bills wrapped up and passed out of the both chambers. So we've kind of reached that point where we have to start that process, but it doesn't mean that we won't continue to engage with the governor, and we certainly hope that his commissioners will be engaged in the conference committee process, and we can come up with bills that the governor will sign.
This is just like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you and Senator Bach reached a deal at the governor's house without the governor. It didn't get done on time. There was a special session. Is that where we're headed?
Well, we had 2/3 of the bills got signed. We had 3 bills that went into special session. 2 of those bills ended up almost exactly the way they were. I think very minor changes and maybe slightly more significant changes to the K-12 bill. I hope that's not where we're headed. I hope that we've all kind of learned that we still do have an opportunity to work together over the next 2 or 3 days, and I hope it means we can get it done right by the end. And I'll note that we're very serious about making sure that we do the work that Minnesotans sent us here to do. We left very specifically 5 weeks at the end of session, which is extra time, more than I think at any other time in recent history, to get this work done. Now, that didn't work exactly the way we had hoped because the governor had different ideas, but we're committed to doing this, and this will be a second full balanced budget that we put on the governor's desk before the end of session. So we're committed to doing our job.
Will you need a special session logistically, just like last time?
My hope is not, and we hope to keep the governor engaged over the next 2 or 3 days. We hope that we can prevent that.
When are you meeting with the next, Mr. Speaker? Is there a scheduled meeting? Or Mr. Lee?
As we left, the governor had to go to an event, and we talked about the possibility of a meeting after we were all on Almanac, so a little plug for Almanac there, just saying. But, yeah, the other thing, too, is we compromised on the transportation bill. We all think that that's important, that we have a significant number there. That number dropped from $372 million down to $300 million because we want to get this done. And I told the governor that we intended to put more money in the later years, the tails as we call it here, so that we funded that properly. And if we could get it all done, we'd do a bonding bill, and some of that would have roads and bridges money as well. So we're doing everything on our part we can to get done and to bring the governor to the table. We all want to get done on time, and we think we can do it. We're doing our part, and we want the governor to do his part.
Does your proposal have any specificity on the E12 and specifically pre-K, or is that the next step of the process?
At this point, no, and you've heard the governor say a few times that he didn't want to do any policy at all. And we push back on that and say every bill always has policy. Every year there's policy. The tax bill alone has 300 policy provisions that are from the Minnesota revenue. And we think we need to work through those. As far as the ones that are more volatile, we'll communicate with them, and we're trying to get some of the things that we think are important for reforms. The governor, I think he has some as well, and so we'll work those out. That's not the end of the world to get those done.
I see your budget now has a drawdown of the healthcare access fund. Is that properly understood to be one-time money, or did you also decide to keep that healthcare access fund going with some change in the provider tax, which I think now has a sunset in 2019?
Right. There is no extension of that provider tax in this bill, and if you've seen in all the governor's proposals, he wants $350 million of healthcare access, so we came his way a little bit on that as well, because we are trying to bring this to a close. I still think we can do it, but that was our compromise with the governor.
So is this one-time money?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this understood as 258 million in cuts to HHS plus another 200 million or healthcare access? Or is the net 58 million in cuts?
The net would be 258 down.
Okay,
So-
and then another 200 million offset?
No, 458, and then the 200 healthcare access would bring that. The other thing I want to say about the healthcare access is we also have talked about, both House and Senate, that we have $142 million that was taken out of that for the reinsurance bill that the federal government will likely pass, and so we expect that to come back into the healthcare access fund.
Did you present these targets to the governor as an offer, or is this new, are these new since you last met?
We kind of have tried to get away from the offers back and forth. The senator and I snuck away from all of you last night and went over to the residence and just met with the governor in person. We continued that today. We met with our larger group, and we have since met, I think, twice with the governor, just us, to try to get to an agreement and to try to at least feel each other out to where the guardrails and boundaries were and our constraints respectively. So this is really similar to what we did propose to the governor as kind of where we needed to be. I think we are open and want to you can see that in our numbers. We've left a little flexibility in case we need to make some changes to get bills suitable for signature to the governor's desk. But we've tried to get away. We've tried to work together rather than kind of an adversarial firing offers back and forth. We think that maybe is more productive. So.
Did he respond to this idea at all? Did he say, I will veto it all if we don't have a signed agreement, or is he open to signing some of these bills?
I think he is, and I think he's committed to working with us right to the end. We certainly know that we need to have the governor's signatures in order for these bills to become law, and I think he knows that he needs a legislature to pass bills to fund what he needs funded. So we have to work together, and I think we all understand that that takes compromise. We certainly understand that we're not going to get everything we want. We know he understands he's not going to get everything he wants, but ultimately we want to put forth a budget that really invests in Minnesota's priorities and funds those shared priorities, while still respecting, some tax relief and some money for roads and bridges. We think all that is important.
When do these bills hit the floor?
Well, that's yet to be determined, because we still are working with the governor. And so we want that to be part of the process. But obviously, when we start conference committees, we know we're near the end. And no matter what, we're near the end. It's Friday, whatever time it is now. So we got to get going.
So the conference committees will meet tonight, tomorrow?
That'll be up to each one of the conference committees. We've told them you need to get started.
The hospitality industry tells me they're expecting preemption, they at least end up in one or more of the final budget bills. You know which of those bills it'll end up being at?
Yes, I do. And that's always been something that we've worked towards, and there are some things that the governor wants as well, and we're going to find a way to put those in a basket.
Will any of these bills have a lights on provision?
I don't know that we've had that conversation yet. We still are working towards what we hope is a successful conclusion that will get bills signed by the governor. That's what we're working towards, and we're working with the governor to accomplish that.
Are you expecting to put a bonding bill on the floor?
It's certainly on the table. We had a bonding bill on the House floor earlier this week that did not achieve the number of votes to pass successfully. It was an $800 million bill, which is what not only the forecast has called for, but what we have in our budget targets. So, I think a bonding bill is an absolute possibility. I don't know if I'd say a probability, but leaning towards a probability, if not certainly a very, very strong possibility.
And on transportation, you mentioned, I think, Senator, is that a must-do, or is that you'd like to do?
No, that's a must-do. And 300 was a huge sacrifice for us to say that we want to lower that just to try to get this done. And that's why we'll work towards what it looks like in the second, third, and fourth year going out. But that's a give up for us. So we want the governor to give as well. We came way down on the tax bill, and so if you look at the tax bill and the transportation bill together, they're below $1 billion. And early on, the governor talked about, you guys want $1 billion, and seemed open to that. And so we're a bit frustrated that we're not there yet, but we're going to keep working towards that.
And talk a little more about policy overall. Is policy going to be in these bills at the same level it was before? Are you taking some out?
If you're compared to the first bills forward, there'll probably be less policy, but there'll still be policy. And our end goal is to have bills that the governor can sign, that the people of Minnesota will look at and say, this is really good for Minnesota. We want a good tax bill, we want a good transportation bill, and we want to properly fund the different parts of government. But we are concerned about the overall spending of government. Health and Human Services growing at a rate of 20% per biennium is too high. So how do we lower that so that we have money for transportation and tax relief and education and all the other things that we look at? And so that's why it's complex. We're doing our part, and we're going to keep inviting the governor back to do his part.
So will there be policy provisions in these budgets that the governor specifically cited in his veto messages from the first round?
We'll have to work that out. We have been in conversation with the governor on a number of areas that he doesn't really want, but then the question is, what will you accept? We don't really want the spending increases that we have, but some of that we're willing to accept. And so there's many parts that it's a tug of war, and where we end up at the end is someplace in the middle.
So will the conference committees have the commissioners in and kind of negotiate with them all along? Or is this just going to be conference committees saying, here's how it is?
No, we hope to have the commissioners engaged in the process. That did happen, I think mostly successfully 2 years ago. Once Senator Bach and I had reached an agreement on what those budget targets would be on Friday night, the governor stayed engaged, and those bills were changed and improved to the point where 2/3 of them did earn his signature, and we hope to get to a point this year where 100% of them earn his signature. And I think when you look at our numbers, you'll see that there is real concessions here on some of the things that were our biggest priorities. And I hope that everyone sees that as real, genuine effort to get to the kind of compromise that will get these bills signed.
What gets tossed out in the smaller tax bill?
I don't know, we're still a little, it's too soon. It's too soon.
Yeah, that's,
We might tear up if
Yeah.
we talk about it too much.
so our tax chairs just found out the number that we came down to, so we really haven't worked through what that means. And so, some of the key things I mentioned here are things we hope to hang on to.
Were some of your chairs and members upset about the new targets they were given that, and some of what they had to give up here?
On the Senate side, absolutely. We didn't want to have to go down on the transportation bill. The tax bill's going down, and spending has been going up on a bunch of the other areas. And so, but that is part of how you get to the end. And so we're going to keep fighting for transportation, for tax relief, and watching spending. And the governor will have his priorities, and we'll figure out how we finish it.
A couple days ago, I think it's 9 mayors stood where you are, saying they need LGA. Representative Davids talked about, well, we're giving the sales tax cuts. How are the cities going to fare, do you think, in this tax bill? LGA or the sales tax cuts?
Well, we're going to let our chairs work with the commissioners. In fact, that prior question, our chairs have been working with the commissioners, and, the governor's been asking for more LGA and more CPA. I mean, I have to be open to that and consider that, and what we can fit into a 660 bill, that's what we have to decide.
Does the state government budget bill accommodate a legislator pay raise in its figure?
Thank you for that question. So we will find a way because the Constitution requires it. If we do nothing, the Constitution directs that the first dollars out July 1 are for that small pay raise. So, but that's something that the people voted for, and we're gonna live with it. But we don't have a choice. I know the House was trying to figure out a way to work around that, and but the Senate has always said we're going to deal with what the Constitution says. So, thank you for that question,
Let me
Brianna.
clean the bus wheel marks off of my, no, I'm teasing. We are still trying to figure that out in the House. It obviously is contentious, it's controversial. I'm not sure completely that people understood what was going to happen when they voted for it. I think it was worded a little bit creatively on the ballot. I do think that people very often, when I go home to my district, think that we make $130,000 a year or something, or what do they make in Congress? $180,000 a year. Half the people in my district think I go to Washington every week. But the reality is that legislators make $31,400 a year, and we give up a lot of our life. So we're trying to figure out a way to navigate through it in the House, and we haven't figured it out yet.
So it will be in there.
It'll be on the
We
Senate
have two different
side.
positions right now. Have you figured that out? We're not always on the same page.
Senator, do you expect to require Democratic votes to pass this?
Well, I hope not. I mean, in the end, we're looking for a global agreement that automatically means that you're going to have Democrats and Republicans voting for it because the governor's going to sign it. There may be some bills that, are just Republican, but I don't think so. As I look at the bills, if you look at the numbers that we're putting out there, in the end, I think we'll get there with support from both sides.
One of the more dramatic increases is the change in the State Department's bill, up $100 million. Can you tell us a little bit of the thinking that went into that change?
Well, so right now it's 40 million. Is that the number to be? Yeah.
I
And
mean,
so,
it's literally meeting in the middle.
yeah.
The governor talked about wanting to meet in the middle, that the state government bill is an exact middle, that's a great example of meeting exactly in the middle. So that was the reasoning there.
Have you decided in the cybersecurity question of how much of the governor's request there to put in?
I don't think we've made a decision. We have talked about the numbers. His first number, I believe, was 27 million, and then it went up from there. So we're trying to work through what's the appropriate amount in the money we have.
I'm unclear, does the judiciary, public safety budget include all of the chief's requests?
The judiciary budget that we are putting forth has a 2.5% increase for the judges and 2% for the rest. And, you know, our Supreme Court justices, I appreciate what they do. They make $157,000 a year, and 2.5% is what we think fits our budget. And so, you know, like I said, I really appreciate what they do, but we're also trying to make our budget work.
What about the school formula percent increase? Have you determined that yet?
I think, yeah, a lot of these questions in the weeds are still yet to be determined by the chairs and the commissioners. We certainly want the administration involved in that decision-making process, so those decisions, we haven't given direction to the chairs that it must be this or that. So we're going to let them work that out, and we're doing that very specifically because we want the administration engaged in that process. We want bills that the governor will sign.
How's this, obviously you made some concessions from the last time you did it, but obviously when you passed bills the last time, the governor did not respond kindly to it. Explain why you think this time is going to be different in terms of the reaction and the impact this has on the agreement.
Well, you know, I think the last time, you know, the governor, we had hoped to engage the governor in the conference committee process in a more transparent way. We had left extra time to do that. The governor kind of changed what he was requiring and requested that we come up with our own legislative position. We did that. We then decided, you know, too much time had passed that we wanted to make sure that we sent that legislative position to the governor's desk, and we did that. That was our position. If we were in control of everything, that's what we probably would have done. But you know, this represents what we think is real, true compromise, and I think the governor will see that, he'll understand that, he'll appreciate that. We still very sincerely want him engaged over the next 3 days to help us come up with an agreement that will earn his signature, and that's what we hope to accomplish, and I think that's what the difference is.
Does the higher ed target give you enough money for Minnesota State tuition freezes and maybe the U?
The chairs will work that out with the administration. Yeah, I don't know that we know that.
Did you have any requirements on this? This has to be in the budget, or this can't be in the budget?
I'm trying to remember what his response was earlier. Yes.
Okay, so you want me to do it now, right?
I didn't deliver it as well as he did, apparently. Yes, we did have some. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, of course we did, but not a lot.
Can you tell us?
Not a lot. You know, we really want to leave it up to the chairs, and we want to leave it up to the conferees and the administration. We want them involved in this process. The more direction we give, the less those people are making those decisions in a transparent way, and the less the administration is going to feel like they're involved in actually putting these bills together. So, and we won't have a very good opportunity to get these bills signed if we don't let those people make those decisions. So we want everybody engaged in the process. So yes, of course, we've given a few here and there, but I think they're really minor. So the chairs and the conferees and the administration, the commissioners are going to be engaged in that process and hopefully come up with bills that can get signed.
And I asked earlier when the committees will start. Do you have a deadline when they have to wrap up?
We've not made a deadline.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Where does this?
Our
Thank you, guys.
real deadline is Monday at midnight,
Thank
and
you.
we got to have everything done by then. So, thanks.